What if the day Earth needed Superman the most, he was already in a prison built to erase him? What if humanity, afraid of his power, locked away its greatest protector, and then looked up to the sky to see something far worse coming? A shadow longer than cities, an ancient alien serpent, older than fear itself, circling the planet slowly, patiently, like Earth was already dead. Missiles failed, weapons broke, hope disappeared, and the world asked a question it never wanted to ask again. Was jailing Superman the greatest mistake in human history? While oceans rose and the ground cracked, Superman sat powerless behind alien walls, hearing the planet he loved scream for help. No strength, no freedom, only one choice left. Could a world that betrayed its hero still be saved? And would Superman save a planet that chose fear over trust? They thought locking him away would make the world safer. They were dead wrong. Superman had been gone for 3 years. Not dead, not forgotten, simply erased from acceptable conversation. News networks avoided his name like a curse. Governments called the imprisonment a necessary decision for global stability. Ordinary people whispered that it was better this way, better to trust human hands than powers that answered to no authority, no law, no limitation. For a while, the lie almost held together. Cities invested in faster emergency response. Rescue teams trained with desperate intensity. Nations shared intelligence instead of waiting for a man in a cape to descend and fix their problems. Humanity straightened its spine and stood alone, proud and terrified in equal measure. The sky felt emptier without him cutting across it, but people convinced themselves that emptiness was freedom. Then the Atlantic Ocean began to move wrong. It started as small anomalies that scientists dismissed. Tides retreating farther than any model predicted. Whirlpools forming in waters that had been calm for centuries. Satellite imagery revealed strange patterns emerging. Vast spirals stretching across entire seas like fingerprints pressed into the surface of the world. Experts argued bitterly. Some insisted natural explanations existed. Others called the data impossible. Nobody spoke the truth aloud, because the truth tasted like the fear they had promised themselves they had outgrown. Something ancient was coming. The first clear image arrived from a deep space telescope aimed at the wrong part of the sky. A shape so massive it bent starlight around its body like a gravitational lens. Long coiled, seemingly endless. An alien serpent older than recorded history, drifting toward Earth with the patience of something that had never encountered resistance worth remembering. It did not accelerate. It did not attempt concealment. It moved like a creature absolutely certain that nothing in its path could offer meaningful opposition. People looked upward and remembered what they had buried. Military commanders reacted with the only language they trusted. Missiles armed with humanity's most devastating warheads were prepared and aimed. Defense satellites powered to maximum capacity. Every weapon system ever designed was placed on highest alert. The Serpent crossed the edge of the solar system without altering its trajectory by a single degree. When the first nuclear missile detonated against its scales, the warhead shattered like glass thrown against stone. No explosion breached that hide. No radiation scarred that flesh. The attack proved only one thing. Humanity was overmatched beyond comprehension. Panic spread faster than any news network could manage. Atmospheric pressure shifted across entire continents without explanation. Storms formed over deserts that had not seen rain in living memory. Earthquakes rolled through cities already struggling with mass evacuations. The Serpent was not attacking yet. Its mere approach was enough to destabilize planetary systems that had remained balanced for millions of years. And Superman was not there to stand between Earth and extinction. Buried beneath layers of alien metal specifically designed to contain him, bathed in red sun radiation that stripped his cells of their extraordinary capabilities, Superman felt what was happening. Not through his senses, which had been deliberately blinded, through something deeper. A weight settling into his chest that had nothing to do with the chains binding his wrists or the walls pressing around him. He recognized that feeling instantly. He had experienced it every single time Earth faced genuine danger during his years of protection. This time carried a different quality. This time, he could not answer the call. The prison hummed with the constant low frequency of machines engineered specifically to keep him weak. His powers had been methodically drained away, his legendary strength reduced to that of an ordinary man approaching middle age. The world that once celebrated his interventions had decided collectively that his existence represented an unacceptable risk. Now that same world was facing something his absence had made possible. On Earth, leaders who had championed his imprisonment gathered in emergency sessions. Old laws were suspended. Older fears resurfaced with vengeful intensity. Someone finally spoke the words that everyone had been thinking, but nobody possessed the courage to admit. "We made a terrible mistake. We need him back." The sentence landed in the room like a confession of collective guilt. Major cities began to empty, not through organized evacuation, but through pure instinctive flight. Coastal populations vanished as water levels fluctuated wildly. Communication infrastructure failed in cascading waves. People ran not toward any particular safety, but simply away from the sky that had become a source of primal terror. The Serpent finally descended close enough for its shadow to crawl across continents, like a slow promise of ending. Inside his cell, Superman forced himself to stand. His legs trembled violently from the effort. His body screamed protests through every nerve. But his eyes remained absolutely clear, focused on something beyond the walls containing him. He had never protected Earth because anyone requested his service. He had done it because protection was right, because strength meant nothing without purpose, because the alternative was becoming exactly what his enemies always accused him of being. Prison had stripped away his powers. It had not touched his will. The chains around his wrists burned against his skin as he pulled against them, with everything remaining in his depleted body. The containment systems reacted instantly to his resistance. Energy surged through the restraints. Alarms screamed through corridors designed to be escape-proof. Red light intensified to agonizing levels. He collapsed to one knee, gasping for breath that came too thin and too hot. Still, he smiled. Somewhere out there, people had not stopped believing that tomorrow could be better than today. That mattered more than any power he had ever possessed. Above the planet, the Serpent opened its eyes for the first time since entering the solar system. They glowed like dying stars in the final moments before collapse. Earth's remaining defense systems fired together in one coordinated volley, humanity's last desperate gesture of defiance. The sky filled with light and fury, and everything civilization had built to protect itself. The result was silence. The Serpent passed through the explosions as though they were morning mist. Ocean levels surged higher. Tectonic plates groaned under impossible strain. The planet itself seemed to scream. And then something unexpected happened. A signal that had been dormant for 3 years suddenly activated. Ancient monitoring systems built into Superman's prison registered an energy signature they had never been designed to encounter. The red sun field maintaining his weakness flickered for just a fraction of a second. Just long enough for a single ray of yellow sunlight reflected from a distant source to reach his cells. Superman felt that brief contact like air rushing into drowning lungs. He did not break the prison through restored power or recovered strength. He escaped because the facility had been constructed to contain a god, and what emerged from that flickering moment was something more dangerous. A man who absolutely refused to surrender. Metal designed to be unbreakable tore like paper beneath hands that should have been powerless. Gravity warped around a body that should have been ordinary. He fell through darkness that seemed endless, then suddenly through light that seemed impossible. When Superman entered Earth's atmosphere, the entire planet felt his return. Not as hope, though hope was certainly present. As shock. As the sudden realization that what had been removed could return. That what had been buried could rise. That the universe did not always cooperate with human decisions about what should and should not exist. He did not arrive the way he once had, with sonic booms announcing his presence, and his symbol blazing across the sky like a second sun. He crashed into the ocean between the Serpent and the coastline, waves exploding around his impact point. His strength remained unstable, fluctuating wildly. His power had not fully returned, but his choice stood absolutely firm. The Serpent turned its massive head toward the disturbance. For the first time in its ancient existence, something had positioned itself as an obstacle worth acknowledging. Superman did not attack immediately. He did not rush forward in the berserker charge of a being with nothing left to lose. He hovered there in the churning water, battered by waves, smaller than a single scale on the monster before him, visibly damaged by his escape from imprisonment. And he did not move aside. The fight that followed was never about matching power against power. It was about purchasing time with pain. Every strike Superman intercepted spared a city from destruction. Every second he held the Serpent's attention gave evacuation ships another chance to reach safety. Vessels filled with refugees fled harbors, as the creature's focus remained fixed on the small figure that refused to break. Blood colored the ocean water, not the Serpent's ancient blood, his. Still, he maintained his position. Something unexpected began happening across the planet. People stopped waiting for salvation to descend from above. They started acting as though their own choices mattered. Rescue teams moved without waiting for official orders. Nations that had been hoarding resources suddenly shared them without negotiation. Humanity remembered how to function as a single species rather than competing factions. The Serpent sensed that shift in ways its prey had never demonstrated before. Its movement slowed, not from accumulated damage, but from confusion. This world was not breaking apart the way countless others had shattered before its approach. These small creatures were not fleeing in the patterns its instincts expected. Something about Earth resisted consumption in ways the Serpent had never encountered. With a final desperate effort that cost him consciousness, Superman drove the creature back toward the void between worlds. Not destroyed, not killed, simply pushed away from a planet that had proven more troublesome than anticipated. The Serpent retreated into deep space, wounded in a way no physical weapon could have achieved. Choice itself had scarred its certainty. Superman fell back through the atmosphere, barely aware of anything except the planet growing larger beneath him. Arms reached out before he struck the ground. Human arms, not chains designed to contain him. The world did not erupt in celebration. It simply breathed. People did not call him their savior or their protector or any of the titles that had once seemed so natural. They called him Superman again, but the word carried different weight now. This time, they finally understood what that name truly meant. The Serpent did not leave the solar system entirely. It drifted farther out, wounded but patient, like a predator that had learned its intended prey retained the capacity to inflict genuine harm. Earth survived, but survival had come at tremendous cost. Oceans remained dangerously unstable. Storm systems refused to return to normal patterns. The planet itself seemed exhausted, stretched too far beyond its limits, and held together primarily by collective will. Superman survived as well, but survival carried its own price. He lay in a medical chamber constructed in desperate haste, surrounded by equipment that barely understood his alien biology. Doctors worked in tense silence, afraid that speaking might somehow remind the universe how close everything had come to permanent ending. His body healed at a fraction of its normal rate. Prolonged red sun exposure had fundamentally altered his cellular structure. Power no longer flooded back all at once the way it previously had. It returned in unreliable waves, like a damaged heart relearning its essential rhythm. The world waited for news. Not in crowds gathered outside hospitals, not in dramatic vigils covered by news networks. People waited in quieter ways that felt more honest. Rescue workers checked their equipment with extra care. Construction crews cleared debris from damaged roadways. Children asked questions that their parents struggled to answer with anything except uncertainty. Everyone understood the same terrible truth. The Serpent remained out there watching. And next time, Superman might not be enough. He woke to silence. No applause greeted his return to consciousness. No cameras broadcast his first moments of awareness. Just a woman standing near the window, watching the sky, with an expression he recognized from years of partnership. Lois did not turn around when she sensed him stirring. She already knew he was awake. "You scared them," she said softly, her voice carrying no accusation. He nodded slowly, feeling every healing wound protest the movement. "I scared myself." The world demanded answers from their returned champion, but Superman found himself asking questions instead. He met with scientists rather than generals, seeking to understand rather than to plan. He listened to families who had lost homes rather than officials who had lost authority. He offered no promises of protection that he might not be able to keep. He promised only honesty. That approach alone unsettled everyone accustomed to reassuring speeches. Meanwhile, the Serpent adapted to its defeat in ways humanity's instruments could barely detect. Satellites tracked its slow movement through the region beyond Mars. It shed fragments of its enormous body, and those fragments hardened into smaller independent creatures, each one drifting like a seed carried by cosmic winds. Some burned up harmlessly upon entering Earth's atmosphere. Others survived the descent. They fell into deep oceans and remote deserts, awakening ecosystems that had no business existing on this planet, changing the rules of biology in ways no expert could fully predict. Humanity confronted a terrifying realization. The Serpent was not merely an attacker seeking to destroy. It was a colonizer seeking to transform. Superman returned to the sky, but carefully now, testing limits that had become painfully uncertain. Flight came accompanied by pain that would have grounded any ordinary being. Strength faded faster than memory could track. Every action carried consequences that demanded accounting. He could no longer save everything through sheer, overwhelming power. That limitation forced a change he had never previously permitted himself to consider. He asked for help. Engineers designed technological systems to stabilize his fluctuating abilities. Scientists shared data across international borders without bureaucratic approval. Former rivals worked alongside each other because the alternative was extinction for everyone. The world moved faster when fear stopped hiding behind national pride and institutional arrogance. The Serpent struck again. One of its offspring rose from the depths of the Pacific, smaller than its parent, but still larger than any weapon humanity had ever constructed. It did not roar dramatic challenges or issue ultimatums. It simply began draining energy directly from the planet itself, feeding on power that should have been unreachable. Electrical grids failed across entire continents. Cities plunged into darkness. The world remembered how terribly fragile its technological civilization truly was. Superman arrived, but this time humans arrived alongside him. Ships followed his trajectory. Drones mapped potential weak points in the creature's defenses. This was not a battle led by a single godlike figure. This was a defense mounted by an entire planet that had finally learned it could not afford to kneel. The fight was brutal and fast and constantly shifting. The creature adapted to every tactic almost as quickly as attacks could land. Superman bled again, his partially healed wounds reopening under the strain of combat. But something fundamental had changed since his last battle. He did not stand alone against the darkness. When he fell, others covered his position. When he slowed, machines filled the gaps his absence created. Strength had become something shared rather than singular. The creature collapsed into the ocean, defeated not primarily through force, but through coordination that it could not predict or counter. The distant Serpent felt that loss resonate through whatever connection linked it to its offspring. It turned back toward Earth with renewed purpose. The final approach carried no drama. No warnings preceded it. No grand gestures announced its intentions. Just the slow, inevitable return of pressure bearing down on the planet. Gravity distorted in ways that made navigation treacherous. The sky darkened with something that was not clouds. The Serpent had learned from its previous encounters. It would not fight Superman directly and risk another costly stalemate. It would simply break Earth around him until nothing remained worth protecting. Superman understood the truth before anyone managed to articulate it clearly. The Serpent could not be killed through any means humanity possessed. It could only be denied. Earth had to become a place that offered nothing worth consuming, that required a choice nobody wanted to make. Humanity began shutting down parts of itself. Cities reduced their power consumption to minimum levels. Technological systems went quiet across entire regions. Energy signatures were hidden rather than broadcast. The planet deliberately made itself less appealing, less alive to something that fed on growth and activity and noise. The transition hurt in countless ways, both large and small. Lives transformed beyond recognition. Comfort disappeared overnight. Progress reversed in ways that felt like defeat. Superman stayed through all of it, watching over a quieter world that was learning to survive differently. When the Serpent arrived and found no feast waiting, it hesitated. Confusion slowed its approach as it encountered conditions that contradicted its expectations. That moment of uncertainty was enough. Superman and humanity pushed together, not to destroy what they could not kill, but to drive it away from a world that refused to feed its hunger anymore. The Serpent retreated into deep space, not destroyed but rejected, not killed but denied. Earth did not celebrate. Recovery came slowly, measured in years rather than months. The sky remained strange, marked by phenomena that would take generations to fully understand. Superman remained changed in ways that had nothing to do with his fluctuating powers. He walked more than he flew. He listened more than he spoke. Power no longer defined his identity. Trust did. People did not ask him to leave their world. They did not ask him to rule over them either. They asked him simply to stay human. And for the first time in his existence, Superman understood that saving the world had never meant carrying it alone. The world did not return to what it had been before the Serpent. That was no longer possible. Too much had been lost in the crisis, and too much had been learned in the recovery. Cities still stood in their familiar locations, but they felt different now, quieter and more conscious of how easily everything could end. The sky was watched constantly, not with paralyzing fear alone, but with the acceptance of responsibility. Superman stayed, not above the planet, watching from impossible heights, not hidden in the clouds, waiting for the next emergency. He stayed among people, walking through streets that once would have erupted in cheers at his appearance, and now simply nodded in recognition. That change suited him better than celebration ever had. Symbols became dangerous when people leaned on them instead of standing for themselves. He did not want to become an excuse for passivity again. His powers stabilized gradually over the following months. Some days he felt almost like his old self, strength and speed responding to his will without hesitation. Other days he struggled to lift debris that would once have felt weightless in his hands. Pain remained his constant companion, a reminder of everything he had endured. It kept him honest. It kept him connected to the humanity he had chosen to protect. The Serpent did not return, but its influence remained scattered across the planet like seeds of transformation. The fragments it had left behind continued changing ecosystems in ways that defied prediction. New life forms emerged from impossible combinations of terrestrial and alien biology. Old systems that had functioned for millions of years failed without warning. Earth was healing from a crisis, but the healing came with scars that would never fully fade. Superman helped wherever he could, but he refused to take control of the recovery. When political leaders asked him to direct global defense, he politely declined. When frightened people asked him to promise they would always be safe, he could not bring himself to offer that lie. He told them the truth instead. There were no guarantees in the universe. There was only effort and choice, and the hope that both would be enough. That truth spread across the planet faster than fear ever had. Humanity adapted to its new circumstances with creativity that surprised even Superman. Cities were redesigned with emergency evacuation as a fundamental consideration rather than an afterthought. Energy was generated and consumed more carefully than any previous generation had managed. Defense became cooperative across old boundaries instead of competitive between factions. Rivalries that had seemed permanent suddenly felt petty compared to survival. The planet learned how to breathe more slowly. Superman watched all of it unfold with pride. He kept quiet. Then the signal came, not from the depths of space where the Serpent had retreated, from beneath the planet itself. Deep within Earth's crust, something ancient had reacted to the Serpent's prolonged presence near the surface. Not alive in any biological sense, but unmistakably awake. A structure built long before humanity existed, before mammals dominated the land, possibly before complex life emerged from the oceans. It had remained dormant for geological ages, waiting for a reason to rise. Ground split open across a remote region far from any major population center. Sensors monitoring the area failed simultaneously. Communications dropped into static. Superman arrived first, landing near a fracture that glowed with energy signatures that matched nothing in any database. This was not an enemy emerging to attack. This was a consequence of changes humanity had not anticipated. The structure emerged slowly over the course of several days. A machine older than nations, older than civilizations, older than the concept of fear itself. It did not launch attacks against the forces observing it. It simply watched back, measuring the planet and the beings who had inherited its surface. Humanity's reaction nearly destroyed everything the crisis had built. Old instincts surged back to dominance. Weapons were prepared for deployment. Blame circulated through communication networks, looking for acceptable targets. Someone publicly asked whether Superman had caused this situation by attracting the Serpent's attention to Earth in the first place. The accusation hurt more than any physical blow he had absorbed during the fighting. But Superman did not respond with anger or defensiveness. He simply waited. The machine began interacting with the planet's core in ways that scientific instruments could barely measure. Temperatures shifted across entire regions. Magnetic fields distorted in patterns that disrupted navigation. This was not destruction unfolding. It was preparation. Earth was being marked, evaluated, judged by criteria that had nothing to do with human values. Superman realized what was happening before anyone else managed to connect the evidence. The universe was watching Earth. The Serpent had been a test of response rather than a simple attack. Now something else had arrived to observe what remained after the testing was complete. Not a god passing judgment. Not a monster seeking prey. A system that measured worlds by standards that did not care about stories or symbols or individual heroism. Humanity confronted a mirror it had never expected to face. Superman addressed the entire planet, speaking not as a savior descending from above, but as a witness who had seen more than most. He explained what he believed was unfolding without softening the implications. The universe did not reward raw power or technological advancement. It measured balance and cooperation and the capacity for restraint. People listened to his assessment. For the first time in the crisis, nobody asked him to simply fix everything through force. Scientists worked continuously, sharing findings across every boundary that had once divided research communities. Nations contributed resources openly without calculating advantage. Decisions were made carefully, thoughtfully, with awareness that mistakes could not be undone. The machine continued its evaluation process, scanning oceans and forests and cities with energy fields that passed through all attempts at shielding. Then the scan reached Superman. Energy wrapped around him, analyzing his altered biology, his mixture of restored and damaged capabilities, his persistent choice to stand beside rather than above the species he protected. The machine paused its evaluation. Across the entire planet, destabilized systems began settling back toward equilibrium. The structure slowed its activity, its scan apparently complete. It had found something in Earth that it had not anticipated encountering. Not perfection by any absolute standard. Potential worth observing further. Superman felt the evaluation conclude. The machine withdrew back into the depths of the planet, sealing the fracture behind it as though it had never existed. Earth exhaled again, spared from judgment it had not known was being rendered. No official victory was declared. No explanation was provided. The universe did not speak in terms humanity could translate. It simply moved on. Earth remained. Superman stood alone at the site long after everyone else had departed for their homes. He felt tired in a way that no amount of yellow sun exposure could repair. But he also felt something new emerging from that exhaustion. Relief that was almost indistinguishable from hope. The world did not need to be perfect to deserve survival. It needed to be better than it had been before. And by that measure, it had earned another chance. He returned to the city quietly, without fanfare. No cameras followed his path through the streets. No one demanded statements or explanations. Life continued its patient work of rebuilding. That ordinary continuation felt like the greatest success any of them had achieved. The Serpent was gone from their sky. The prison was behind him permanently. The future remained uncertain in countless ways. And Superman stayed, not because the world had become completely safe, but because it was worth staying for. Time passed without softening the memory of what had happened. Instead, memory sharpened into something more useful than fear. Every decision the recovering world made now carried awareness of consequences. Not just the consequences of destruction, but of restraint, of choice, of trust extended and earned. Superman changed alongside the world he had chosen. He no longer rushed toward every crisis that erupted across the planet. He waited, watched, trusted others to respond first. When genuine help was needed, he arrived quietly and left the same way. When situations resolved without his intervention, he stayed away without resentment. That balance proved harder to maintain than any physical battle he had ever fought. The planet adapted in ways that surprised everyone who studied its transformation. Technology advanced more slowly but more carefully. Communities strengthened their internal connections. People stopped building higher toward the sky and started building together across the ground. It was far from a perfect world by any idealistic measure, but it was a world that had finally awakened to its own fragility and its own strength. Then the signs appeared again. Deep space instruments detected movement far beyond the Serpent's last confirmed position. Not a single signal this time. Many signals, forming patterns in regions where chaos should have reigned absolutely. Something was shifting in the darkness between stars. Superman felt it before any alarm reached public awareness. A familiar pressure building in his chest, but sharper now, more focused than the Serpent's approach had been. This was not hunger seeking satisfaction. This was curiosity seeking understanding. Humanity gathered to respond, but the gathering looked different from previous emergencies. No desperate shouting filled command centers. No panic drove decisions. Plans were developed with patience rather than fear. Defense was prepared without aggressive posturing. Earth would not challenge whatever was approaching from a void. It would present itself honestly and accept the consequences. The first contact came subtly, almost gently. Lights appeared across the night sky, steady and distant, like stars that had decided to stop pretending they were fixed in position. They did not descend toward the surface. They observed from their stations, patient and unhurried. Days passed without incident. Nothing happened except watching. Fear tried to grow into panic, but found little space to breathe. Superman remained on the ground throughout the waiting. He stood among people rather than in front of them, refusing the elevated position that crisis usually thrust upon him. When questions came seeking reassurance, he answered carefully, honestly. He reminded people of the Serpent and its defeat, of the machine beneath the earth and its evaluation. He spoke about choices that mattered more than power. Then a message arrived from the lights. Not words in any language humanity recognized. A feeling that passed through minds like understanding shared directly. The universe had become aware of Earth now, not as a threat to be eliminated, not as prey to be consumed, as something unfinished that warranted continued observation. The presence in the sky reacted to Superman differently than to everything else on the planet. Recognition passed through whatever medium the lights used for perception. Not recognition of a god, recognition of a constant, a being shaped by two worlds who had allowed himself to be shaped again by choice. Superman understood what was being offered, not a summons to trial or judgment, an invitation to a path. He could leave Earth behind. He could join something larger than any single planet. He could become a guardian with a scope that extended beyond the world that had both celebrated and imprisoned him. The offer carried tremendous weight. Earth had hurt him, imprisoned him without trial, feared him without understanding. But it had also learned from its mistakes. It had stood without him. It had changed in ways that mattered. Leaving now felt like abandonment of everything that learning had meant. Staying felt like accepting limitations on what he might become. He did not answer immediately. Days stretched into weeks, while the lights waited without impatience. People looked towards Superman without pressure. They did not beg him to stay. They did not push him to go. They simply waited for him to choose. That trust mattered more than any promise he could have made. Superman walked through cities one last time, not as a goodbye, but as an assessment. He observed people helping each other without asking who would save them if help failed. He watched children learning about the Serpent not as a nightmare that still haunted their sleep, but as a lesson that had taught their world to be stronger. He saw a planet that had finally stopped waiting for miracles to descend from above. That observation decided his choice. Superman returned to the open fields where his journey on Earth had begun so many years before. He looked up at the waiting lights, feeling the universe's attention focused entirely on his next action. For the first time in his existence, he spoke not as a protector addressing those he guarded, but as an equal addressing peers. He chose Earth. The lights shifted in patterns that suggested understanding. Something passed between Superman and the presence observing him, an acknowledgement that his choice had been recorded and respected. The distant watchers withdrew, not disappointed by his answer, but accepting of it. The universe moved on to other matters. Superman felt something settle inside him that had been restless for years. Not power returning to its full capacity, purpose finding its proper form. His strength stabilized completely for the first time since his escape from prison. Balanced, controlled, finally earned through choice rather than granted through accident of birth. Life continued its patient rhythms. Disasters still occurred across the planet. Conflict still emerged from the endless friction of competing interests. But the world responded without paralysis or panic. Superman helped when help was genuinely needed, but he never again replaced human effort with godlike intervention. He remained a reminder of what was possible, not a solution that made trying unnecessary. Years accumulated into decades. The story of the Serpent transformed in the telling. It became something other than a warning about cosmic threats and human inadequacy. It became a foundation for understanding what strength actually meant. Children learned that heroes demonstrated their greatest power when they trusted others to be heroic too. They learned that gods were dangerous when worshipped but invaluable when they chose humanity over divinity. Superman listened to those stories as they spread across the generations. He did not correct the exaggerations. He did not insert himself into narratives that had grown beyond his individual actions. Because the greatest change had never been in the sky where he flew. It was in the way Earth had finally learned to stop waiting to be saved. The future did not arrive all at once with dramatic announcement. It came in quiet steps, in choices made without expectation of applause. Earth no longer felt like a world waiting for external judgment to determine its fate. It felt like a world learning how to stand on its own strength. Superman became part of that rhythm. He appeared less often in the sky and more often on the ground, helping rebuild after storms that would once have been prevented, pulling survivors from collapse zones that machines could not reach in time, listening far more than speaking. People stopped asking when he would leave them again. The question no longer carried meaning for anyone. Then, without any warning that instruments could detect, the universe answered a question nobody had asked aloud. A signal reached Earth older than any language, weaker than any threat. It originated from the remains of the Serpent drifting in deep space. Not a return to assault, an echo seeking contact. Something had survived out there, far beyond the solar system's edge. A fragment of the alien Serpent drifted through the void, damaged but aware. It had learned from its defeat. It had observed Earth's transformation from that tremendous distance. And it did not approach in anger. It approached in recognition. The fragment traveled slowly, broadcasting surrender long before it entered the region where humanity's weapons could reach it. Earth prepared for potential combat, but did not initiate attack. Everyone remembered what fear and haste had cost them before. Superman met the fragment alone, far from Earth and its fragile ecosystems. Not to fight, to listen. The Serpent fragment communicated without words. It shared memories through some medium that bypassed language entirely. Its kind consumed worlds because consumption was how they had always survived. They had never encountered balance before, never known any alternative to endless hunger. Earth was different, not because of Superman's strength in combat, because of what the planet had become after the destruction ended. The Serpent understood too late that other ways of existing were possible. It asked for nothing from Superman except acknowledgement, proof that change mattered, evidence that even a fragment of something terrible could choose differently. Superman gave it exactly that. He did not destroy the fragment despite having the power to do so easily. He guided it away from populated space toward uninhabited regions where it could fade gradually without causing harm to any living thing. The universe observed that choice quietly. Another decision recorded. Another test passed. Earth never learned how close that encounter came to becoming another devastating war. That was exactly the point. Years continued turning into decades. Superman aged slowly in ways that were difficult to measure. Not in body, which remained capable of extraordinary feats. In presence, he became quieter over time, lighter, less central to narratives that no longer required central figures. Humanity did not weaken because of his reduced visibility. They grew. New protectors emerged across the planet. Not beings with impossible powers, but ordinary people with hard-won wisdom and carefully developed skills. Systems were constructed to prevent the mistakes that had once put Superman in a prison designed to contain gods. Transparency replaced institutional fear. Trust replaced attempts at control. Statues of Superman were never constructed. Instead, schools taught the complete story of his imprisonment, of the Serpent's arrival and defeat, of the moment when Earth collectively chose responsibility over blame. Superman was included in those lessons, but he was never presented as the focus. He preferred it that way. One day, standing at the edge of a city he had helped rebuild so long ago that most residents had never seen him work, Superman felt the universe's attention return. Not watching this time, listening. He understood then that Earth was no longer being tested for worthiness. It was being invited into something larger, not to join a cosmic order with its own demands and hierarchies, to become an example that others might learn from. A world that had faced annihilation, betrayed its greatest defender, recognized its mistake, and moved forward together. Superman smiled quietly at the sky. His journey had never truly been about the power he possessed, or the revenge he might have taken, or even the salvation he had provided during the worst moments of crisis. It had always been about trust, losing it, earning it back, choosing to stay when leaving would have been so much easier. As the sun began setting, painting the sky in colors that had once seemed ordinary and now seemed precious, he walked back into the city streets. No cape marked his passage. No symbol announced his presence. Just another figure shaped by the same world he had once saved. The universe did not need Superman anymore. Earth did not need a god watching from above. And that he finally understood. was the greatest ending any hero could hope for.